better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out, you better watch out. Jeff and George are coming to town. Now you know why I'm not a singer.
I don't know what just happened, but it made me very happy.
Conversations with your host George and Jeff. Ooh, classic comics, the classic comics fun of the day. Talking about old comic books is the thing that they love the best.
It's the CCF in depth.
How you doing, everybody? I'm George.
How you doing, everybody? I'm not George. I'm Jeff.
Well, I'm happy about that.
You're happy that I'm not George. I guess I'm happy. I'm happy to be me. How's that?
I'm happy you're you too, man.
Aw, thank you. I'm happy you're you. God, it's good to be back doing this. You know, for anyone who isn't a Patreon member who missed the secret updates we do, we recorded episode 5, the original episode 5, probably like a month and a half ago? A long time ago. Yep. And due to technical glitches, the episode was unusable. And we've been scrambling to re-record it ever since. And we have a special guest that we're keeping secret who's in that episode, and coordinating times and recording and all that has been complicated. So George decided it would be a cool idea to do this little micro episode in between, just to keep the fun going, because we really miss doing this. So this is, George, do you want to explain the episode? I'm doing all the talking.
Well, you know, I kind of came up with, since this is the weekend right after Thanksgiving, the next holiday is Christmas, so I figured let's talk about some Christmas stories, or stories that make you feel Christmassy or positive or that kind of vibe. So let's just talk about any funny books, comic books that fit that mold, that have Santa Claus or don't have Santa Claus, or whatever holiday you observe.
George, you make me feel Christmassy.
Ho, ho, ho.
Did you just call me a hoe?
Here we go again.
Yeah, you know, it's a funny thing. This is my favorite time of year by far. In fact, I'm a little worried my energy is going to be too low, because I get so chill and content for the holiday season. Plus, I'm like completely stuffed full of leftover Thanksgiving turkey right now, so I'm in like the most chill vibe possible. It's funny. Just a little, maybe too much background on me. I was raised Jewish, and yet I can't get enough of this season. I think there's a religious Christmas, and there's very much a secular Christmas as well. So, I mean, you know, you celebrate the birth of Jesus if you're a Christian. You do midnight mass maybe, which is a beautiful thing. I've been there. I love it. But there's also a Christmas that is just a time of year for everybody during the darkest months to celebrate kindness and peace and bring out the best of us and enjoy and comfort and exuberance, and I'm here for it. I mean, I do have kids who are raised with two faiths, so you know we observe Christmas anyway. But I am the biggest darn fan of Christmas there is, and so I want to be clear: this podcast certainly isn't a Christian podcast. We're here for everybody, but I also think Christmas is here for everybody too. So I hope no one is offended with the idea that we're doing sort of Christmassy holiday specials, and we'd include Hanukkah too if there were any good Hanukkah specials. I've read a few Hanukkah comics, and there's probably a Ben Grimm one out there I haven't read somewhere that's awesome, but the ones I've read were very So Christmas specials it is, right?
It only took him like 50 years to make Ben Grimm Jewish. So
was he? I thought he was Jewish in the beginning. He wasn't.
They never mentioned it. I think they mentioned it like after the 2000s or something.
Well, that's surprising to me, because when Stan and Jack did Sergeant Fury, they had they never outright said it, but they heavily suggested that Izzy was a Jewish character. So I assume Ben Grimm being Jewish might have been something they threw in the beginning too, because obviously both of them were Jewish.
Well, you know what? Kurt would know this. Kurt, paging Kurt. That knows everything.
Hey, that reminds me, by the way, quick plug. If you are here for, Christmas and you like countdowns, boy, you need to be checking out the CCF's 12 Days of Classic Comics Christmas that Kurt runs. We've been doing it for 19 years now. And this year's topic is spin-off titles, looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. So don't forget to check out classiccomics.org and the 12 Days of Classic Comics Christmas. You won't regret it.
I never miss it. And I tell you something that's really nice too. There's people that are members of the forum that never come to the forum except in December to do this one thing, which is kind of nice. It's like everybody coming home.
It feels like old family visiting. I agree with you on that one.
That's right. It is nice.
It's forum involvement comes and goes. There are years where you are reading comics all the time. You got to talk comics all the time, and there are years where other things take priority. But I think it's nice the CCF always is a home people can come back to, and the 12 Days of Classic Comics Christmas is that event that sort of leaves a light on and sends out the beacon and tells people, "Come on back. We'd love to see you again."
Jeff, there's some really nice people in the forum. I mean, that's a weird thing to say on the internet, but there's some people that you'll make friends with and you'll be friends with for years. Matter of fact, you and I are friends.
Yeah, never met in person yet, have we?
No, but I think I know what you look like, unless you're catfishing me.
I've been sending you pictures of Japanese models for years now. I'm sorry. It's about time you knew.
You're not Japanese?
All right, so what we're doing, we probably should have explained by now, is we did a top 5 for Halloween. This is our top 5 favorite stories to revisit during the Christmas season, and they don't necessarily have to be about Christmas, but they have to have a sort of Christmas vibe to them. And I had a lot of fun rereading for this, George. I know you did too. I can't wait to get into it.
Let's get into it then.
All right, you want to go first with your number 5?
Okay, number 5 for me is DC Comics Presents 67. Superman teams up with Santa Claus.
What? That's awesome.
It had to happen because you demanded it. Nobody demanded it. But anyway.
I would have demanded if I thought to demand it.
All right, so very quick. It starts with a kid holding up Santa Claus in in one of those, the Salvation Army things.
Mm-hmm.
And Superman happens upon, and he shoots Superman with like a laser. Like this is not just a regular toy. It's like a laser thing. So Superman says something's wrong. He takes the kid to the Fortress of Solitude and hypnotizes them to finding out what actually happened.
Wait,
turns out
he took a kid to his private Fortress of Solitude and hypnotized him?
I didn't think about that, but yes, he did.
Oh my!
Without the parents' permission. These were different times.
Wow.
But anyway, so he takes him to the Fortress of Solitude. He hypnotizes them, and he finds out that he found that toy in his closet. You know how kids look for like toys that are wrapped already. They can't wait till Christmas. Well, he found that, and it turns out it had some kind of hypnotic suggestion that made him go rob places. So Superman kind of deduces that Toy Man's behind it. So on his way, flying the kid back from the Fortress of Solitude, the kid shoots him with the toy gun that's still, I guess, active, and Superman goes down and is in the snow, like totally out. And at this point, Superman looks like his powers are gone. The kid is gonna freeze because it's out there, in the fortress. And along come elves. Yes, elves. And they help him.
This story just keeps getting better.
Yeah, I mean, look, once I said Santa Claus, then you knew there had to be a tip-off. But anyway, so they take Superman and the kid to Santa's workshop. And Santa says, well, I know where he's located. And is how would you know that? He says, well, I see everything. I know when you're sleeping. I know when you're awake. The whole thing. So you actually see, like in Santa's workshop, there's like a video room, and you can see everywhere. Everybody's home and whatever. I mean, yeah, I didn't think about it. It's getting creepier as it goes.
Wow, seriously.
But anyway, I mean, look, he sees you when you're sleeping, right? Come on, man. So anyway, it turns out Toy Man put in his toy stores, which he owns, all these weapons, and he put them to be sold, and they're going all over. So anyway, they go to one of the toy stores. They confront Toy Man, and Superman's still beat up because apparently he was shot when that toy shot him. It shot him with some white dwarf. I think that's an atom thing. The atom it makes you heavy or something, or some pseudo comic science. Anyway, so he's not all he is. So Santa Claus sends in toys to get up and start fighting against the opponents that Superman has, and it goes along that way, and you find that it captures Toyman. Everything is restored, and he's everything's good, and it's interesting because Superman's thinking about this. Santa Claus is saying the whole toy thing reminds him of Krypton. It has show a scene of him as a kid in Krypton, and he's playing with this toy that it makes his thoughts become like a video in front of him, and it was like a toy he had as a kid. So anyway, they defeat Toyman, and as Santa Claus is flying back to the Fortress of Solitude, he again gets shot by the kid's toy.
Oh my God.
And I know this time he wakes up in the snow, and the kid is above him, and he says, "What happened? What am I doing?" He says, "I don't know, Superman. You got hit with this toy and you went down." And he says, "Well," he goes, "What's all this about Santa Claus? Did that really happen?" He goes, I can't believe that there's a Santa Claus. He goes, and the kid says, "I believe in Santa Claus." So anyway,
Oh,
he takes the kid. He actually takes the kid to his home, and when Superman goes back to where he lives, not the fortress like where Clark Kent lives,
yeah.
he starts to undress, and he takes out a toy that was hidden inside of his cape, and it's the very toy he had in Krypton, and
Oh,
that's the way the story ends. Yeah.
that's
So
adorable.
it's interesting because Santa Claus is like more powerful than Superman.
Right.
I
Well,
mean, maybe you could say magic.
well, I mean, isn't that one of the issues always when you're dealing with a shared universe where you have characters from another planet? Always, you know, is it the same God on each planet, and is it the same Santa Claus? So apparently, in this case, this Santa Claus visits every planet and gives gifts to good children.
Well, I tell you this, I do have a tinfoil hat theory about that.
Oh, okay, bring it on.
Tinfoil hat theories.
Santa Claus, Mixaplix, and the other one. What's the other imp from the other universe? Impossible Man. They're all one and the same.
Definitely Impossible Man in Mitzelplex for sure. Santa Claus, that's interesting.
Santa Claus too, because he has all the magical powers that allows him to do anything. He just thinks about it. He does it. He could travel a
Wow.
whole world. He could travel a whole world in one night.
So, like, once a year, he's not like a maniac. He's just, like, really, really kind?
Yes. The
Okay.
two the two imps turn into Santa Claus for one that time of the year.
I would read that story.
Somebody out there write that story.
Well,
Jeff would read it.
I hate to admit it. I'm not often one to praise the man, but this is a story that John Byrne would be perfect for.
I didn't say anybody gets raped in the story. I guess I shouldn't have said that.
Well, you do have Superman taking this underage boy back to the Fortress of Solitude and hypnotizing him, so who's to say?
These stories. It helps not to look too closely at them.
You got to wonder that there had to have been some kid reading that in the 1970s when it came out who was then terrified for the rest of his life ever to go look for his Christmas presents early. Because they just might be, designed by the toy man.
Don't let this happen to you.
Some poor kid Christmas Day was like, no, you unwrapped them for me.
Okay, Jeff, that's enough of that. What's your number 5?
DC Comics breaking children's psyches since 1970. Okay, my number 5. I'm gonna go. I know I set the bar for like thinking outside the box, but this one really is not outside the box at all. It's one I think that most people know and have read, although they might not have thought of it for a Christmas story. But it really is one, and it's Eastman and Laird's Leonardo standalone #1 issue from 1986. That was part of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when, after issue number 9, I think it was, each character got their own little one-issue one-shot. And Leonardo's is, it's Christmas and you're watching the other 3 turtles sort of decorate, April's apartment and get in the Christmas festivities. And Leonardo's out there being serious as he does. And he is getting his butt kicked by the Foot Clan and discovers that Shredder has returned. And it's important to me for a couple of reasons. If you go back and read the original Ninja Turtles comic, not the one based on the cartoon, but the original one, it's a really uneven series. And after the first issue, the series doesn't really have a path. It's kind of all over the place. And then Leonardo #1 and Ninja Turtles #10 and #11, that 3 issue storyline is the best story they did for years and years and years afterwards. And it ended up being the best part of the Ninja Turtles movie from 1990, I think it was. They took it almost directly, and it's a really powerful story because you've got this contrast going on between the innocence, heartwarming comfort of Christmas and this you can't ever let down your guard. It was the Ninja Turtles was wacky and fun after that first issue when they killed Shredder, and then suddenly it wasn't fun anymore. It was dark, it was gritty, it was more real that your enemies can show up at any given time and you can never let down your guard, and it was insanely powerful. It's not heartwarming in the least, but I think if it hadn't been on Christmas, it almost wouldn't have been as upsetting, as emotionally powerful to watch Leonardo get beaten nearly to death and have the Ninja Turtles, attacked in April's apartment, trashed, and everything devastated by this enemy that had come back when they least expected it.
So is this like the Die Hard of comic books where they put a Christmas tree in, but it's not really a Christmas story?
Okay, you can't judge me on this one. I've still never seen Die Hard.
Where did I go wrong?
I know. I have no excuse. I need to see it. I know this. I think Christmas does play an important part in the story. I think the heartwarming lets you let down your defenses and therefore makes it more devastating as a result. Um, why do I pull it out during
Yeah.
Christmas? I think just I think it just reminds me of it, and then I have to read the whole 3 issues, and then I end up reading more Ninja Turtles, and I get
Wow.
sucked back into it. It's I mean, if you want a fun Ninja Turtles story, the Michelangelo standalone is a much more fun Christmas story. The Leonardo one feels a lot more like Leonardo. It's more serious. It's more dark. But so am I, and so
You
are
know,
my
I
preferences when I read.
salute you as a Ninja Turtle fan because I just it never did anything for me. But I mean, to be fair, I only think of them like as a cartoony eat the pizza thing. I wouldn't the serious stories that they started with. I don't really know anything about that.
It's partially a myth that the comics were way more serious. After the first issue, it's a wacky comic right off the bat, and it never really found a consistent direction until way later on. But I the, I think the power of it, other than the fact that I was there at the time and I was collecting the toys, and I was caught up in that Turtle Mania because I was 7 when the cartoon came out. But beyond that too, I think the 4 basic characters capture 4 basic personality types that apply to all people. You either are a Leonardo or Donatello or a Michelangelo or Raphael, and that's a lot of why it endures. I actually, it's weird. You can look at most 4-person groups in popular media and find the same personality types amongst them. But Ninja Turtles was the one that my generation claimed.
Sounds cool to me.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, I'll move on to number 4 real quickly. Uh,
Okay.
it's Superman 64, February 1992. You're a pretty big Superman fan, so I'm pretty sure you read this. It's a story that centers around the one time a year where Superman he actually sits down and reads all the letters sent to him throughout the whole year. And a lot of the letters are from people that need money or they need something. And there's a portion of the letters that are just want to exploit Superman and let's start a business together and we can make millions by you doing this and whatever. People trying to take advantage. But there's other people that are with heartfelt problems. There's one person that writes to him that says that she survived Auschwitz and that she just discovered a sister is alive in East Germany. And if there's any way that she can see him or whatever, and Superman goes to the house, arranges for her to go to there in a flight. And it's kind of funny. He gets her, they arrange passports and flight. And I just thinking for a second, well, I mean, can't you just fly her there? Although she's like an old lady, so I'm thinking, well, maybe that doesn't work. So
Yeah, that might not go well in the heart.
yeah, you might land in East Germany, she'll be dead. So that doesn't work. So, but
Hey,
anyway,
I
they
brought your
reunite.
sister. Oh, darn, she's dead. Sorry
Oh,
about
this
that.
sucks. So yeah, so he helps her with that. There's another letter he opens as a kid that draws a picture of Superman and says, "My father has a brain tumor. Can you please help me? Come and help us. Can you operate on him? I know you could do anything, Superman." And he actually goes to the location and he finds out that the father just died and I mean just died. He goes to the hospital. The kid's there. The wife is there, and gives his condolences. And she's like, "Look, this is a difficult time." And the kid comes in and starts screaming at him, "You could have saved them. Where were you? I thought you were Superman." And kind of was kind of hard on him. He says Superman says that this is like the hardest time of year for him because he has to face all these people that he really can't help. So, but anyway, before he leaves, he tells the woman you should consider donating, the organs because there's people that can have a chance for life, with the organs that your late husband has. And he says that because he happened to get another letter before he left from a woman that needed a heart transplant. So of course, in all Christmas style, she actually donates the heart, and the woman lives in some other part of the world or part of the country. So I mean, and this is all like just life and death stuff, and he's with Lois Lane reading these letters, and it's pretty terrible. So there's another letter he reads that Daily Planet, because of budget cuts, they couldn't like put a party together for poor kids, for the disadvantaged. And Superman, he makes a phone call to Bruce Wayne. He says, "Hey, can you hook me up with some toys?" And of course Bruce Wayne says, "Sure." And he calls the department store and he gives him like, you know, carte blanche to get whatever he needs. And he says, but he wanted to make it special, so he goes to a scientist called Emil
Yeah, emo, Professor Hamilton.
Hamilton. That's the name. Well, anyway, he tells him, "Look, maybe we can make it extra special. I'll go to a zoo, and we can alter these animals, and we can find a way to actually surprise him." And he does that. He actually he puts together a sled, and he gets two deer, and they're flying through the sky. And Superman puts on his total black suit and flies the sled. He's like under the sled in his black suit, so he can't be seen. And he lands there, and there's a nice meal. There's toys for everyone. It's a nice little ending at the end. So, I kind of like I kind of like that he helps these people and he helps these kids, but he realizes just too many people that he can't help. I mean, it's a
Well,
sad
bah
story for
humbug to you,
Christmas.
George.
I mean, look, yeah, I don't want to be a downer, but there's a lot of people depressed around the holidays too. So
No,
I
the
think
reason I was saying bah humbug was because this was my number 3.
get out of here. No way. Oh, yeah, okay.
Dead
I
serious.
figured
This is my number 3.
I figured this one, and there's another one that I figured you might duplicate. This one because I know you're Superman. You're a Superman
Yeah.
fan. So
Well, and it's the thing is that's Dan Jurgens was every year starting with 1990. Once John Byrne and George Perez were no longer in control of the post-Christ Superman office, he had a tradition every year of doing a special Christmas issue that
is that
usually
right?
tackled.
Okay.
Yeah, the first one was the homeless for the holidays, where there was an intern at the Daily Planet who had been secretly living in a supply closet there because she didn't have a home, she couldn't afford one.
Yikes.
And they addressed that in that issue, and it was a powerful story. And then they did one about drinking and driving, as well as the issue of euthanasia and rights to die. Then the year afterwards, with Funeral for a Friend, there's an issue that goes back to the Metropolis mailbag, this story, where now that Superman is dead, the other heroes go and try to answer these letters for Superman because he's not there anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty cool. But no, I agree with you. It's a downer of an issue, but what I love about it, and there's so much I love about it, but it captures what I love about the post-Christ Superman so much, that he can do anything, and yet he tortures himself. He wants to help everybody, but he can't. And so he doesn't just choose like the 4 that he can polish off easiest so he can feel good about it. He chooses the ones that are most dire, the ones that need him the most. And that moment where he's standing over that kid explaining, "I can't save your dad."
Yeah.
And he tries to explain, he goes, and this was such a powerful moment for me. He says, "Listen," the kid says, "You're Superman." He goes, No. I'm Superman.
Man, yeah.
I have powers, but I'm still a person deep down inside." And I mean, there was the clearest defining moment for what made the post-crisis Superman different from the pre-crisis. The pre-crisis Superman was Superman, but this guy was still a human being who had powers but couldn't do everything. And I mean, my favorite part was just that he still has a superhuman ideal for himself. He wants to help everyone. He wants to save everybody. And Lois watching him torture himself with such love and pity at the same time, it was incredibly powerful. And Jackson Geist doing the art on that one, Butch Geist, I think he calls himself now, it
Yeah.
was incredibly gorgeous. It was such a powerful story. And oh, and by the way, that Batman moment, I love the fact that when Superman calls Wayne Manor, Bruce is standing in front of a fireplace brooding, and Alfred says he's not taking calls right now. He's too upset. And Bruce and Superman's like, "Put me through anyway." Like, screw it, Bruce. Quit brooding for a moment. People need help.
Yeah, it was a nice little touching story. It was dark though because I mean at the beginning they walk into where like the letter room and it's totally pitch dark
Yeah,
and they're looking through these letters and it's just like Mission Impossible. Oh, I
yeah,
have to add also the person that lets him into that letter room, his name is Willie.
yeah.
Fantastic Four's mailman is Willie Lumpkin. So
Oh,
I
you're
got a feeling
right.
that might be a little crossover there happening.
Oh, that's
Unofficial, of
and going
course.
back to Impossible Man and Mitzelplick. Yeah.
It's all coming together, man. It's all coming together.
Two other things I love about that issue that are really subtle is one, it's called Metropolis Mailbag, which is the same name as a letter page for Superman, kind of implying almost as if this was real, as if these were the letters that the DC office gets addressed to Superman, which I'm sure probably is not, but it added an extra level of reality to it.
Hmm.
Maybe in a way that the people writing these stories feel like Superman in a way that they wish they could use this character that they have control over to save the world's problems and can't. And I also love
Wow.
the fact that the issue starts with them, with the first person Superman tries to help is a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
It's a really nice nod that this Christmas story begins by helping Jews. I mean, that was just a really cool, inclusive thing to do.
Hey, look, everybody deserves a break. Everybody deserves help.
Yeah.
But he can't reach everybody. So I guess that's the sad part of the story. But
It's sad, but it's also very positive because he wants to. And seeing that Superman has that desire to truly help everybody, even at even at the cost of sacrificing his own happiness,
hmm.
it's beautiful. It's comforting. It's so wholesome, even while it's dark.
Well, you described this story a lot better than I did. So
Oh, that's not true.
good man,
That's
good
not true.
man.
I that was one of the three I thought we might overlap on, and I'm so glad we did because, I mean, all but one of the Jurgens Christmas stories are amazing, but that is clearly the best of them, and I'm so glad you love it too.
Good. So you want to add anything, another story, or you want to just use that as number three?
I'll flip flop it. We'll make that my number four. I'll move my number four up to number three. We'll make it work.
Okay.
All right, so let's hear
Who goes now?
you go to number three.
Oh, this is the one I'm sure you're gonna duplicate, and I think everyone in the forum
Okay.
loves this story. It's called.
All right.
It appeared in a comic book called Christmas with the Superheroes number two in 1989. It's by Alan Brenner and Giordano, and the name of it is short. All acquaintances be forgot. Does it ring a bell?
So I don't want to take away your steam. I've seen that on a lot of people's lists. I've never read it. So you're going to tell
Oh,
me about it for the first time.
you're gonna read it. Well, I won't do it justice, but in essence, is this: it's a dead man story, and he's traveling, of course, the world and can't be touched, and he could only possess people's powers, bodies, but he can't really be part of the world unless he does that. And he does that to two people. He does it to one, like some kind of corporate raider, and he abuses him by taking his money and buying things for his friends, and then sending bonuses to some employees that he laid off. And then he sees a couple in it looks like Central Park ice skating, and he gets in the man's body, and he says, romancing some woman that's with them. They go to a party, and then he kind of gets feels guilty, and he says, this is not fair because I'm taking away this guy's life at this point, and and when I leave his body, he won't remember any of this. So I'm sort of, depriving him. So he leaves the body, and at that point, he's screaming to the heavens, says, "Why did it have to be like this? Why can't I just when my mission was finished? Why me?" And as he's doing this woman says, "Hey, how you doing? You okay?" And he says, "Am I okay? You can see me? He goes, yeah, I can see you. He says, why don't you take off that mask? And he says, what's the matter? And that man tells her, well, I'm in this form. I can't ever, you know, touch anything. No one can see me. No one knows what I've done for them. And she sort of like straightens him out and says, look, you're doing this for the glory. I mean, what's the problem? You don't like it because you're not getting recognition. And she tells him, she kind of tells him off, and then she tells him it's this beautiful little passage, and he says, I know what you've done for this world, and I know that it's important. And she says, and I'm gonna read from one of the panels. It says, we do it because it needs to be done, because if we don't, no one else will. And we do it even if no one knows what we've done, even if no one knows we exist, even if no one
Wow.
remembers we ever existed. So he sees this when she tells me, so I'm sorry, you're right, and you know, he kind of straightens out, feels guilty about that. So as he's leaving, he asks her, well, what's your name? He goes, oh, you wouldn't know me. My name is Kara, Supergirl. Her dad in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh
And
my
apparently,
gosh.
yeah, apparently she's a ghost and can see him as well.
Oh my
So
god. All right,
I
you've
know
sold me. You've sold me. I am buying this as soon as we finish recording
you
tonight.
you got to
For
buy it. Yeah,
sure.
you got to read this
Wow.
book. Yeah, it's a beautiful story, beautifully written by Alan Brenner, and beautifully drawn by Dick Giordano.
And you said
And
it was
that
1989, right?
1989.
I
So
wonder how much of that conflict was inspired by Quantum Leap. Do you remember the TV show?
I remember it, but I didn't really watch it much.
I mean, the whole idea is the main character is leaping from time to time into different bodies, and he can never go home. And every time that he saves someone's life or fixes it, he thinks this will be the time he gets to go back, and he never does. And I don't know. Kind of seems like it might be that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that man is, when he found his killer, he was supposed to have been free to go to heaven or whatever, and it still looks like he's still here. So he got a raw deal.
Yeah, but the
It's a nice
angst over
story.
that, yeah, that's cool. And obviously we just did Crisis, so the death of Supergirl is still heavy on my mind. Wow,
Well,
man, I'm excited about that.
that's 86. This is 89, so we're talking about 3 years later.
Yeah,
And I mean, just the point, just that line where she says, even if people don't remember we ever existed. I was like,
right.
ouch, you know.
Wow,
'Cause she did
that is
never exist,
so.
and that you, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very nice story.
Oh, that's
So
amazing,
what's your number
George.
three, sir?
Well,
What's your number three?
I'm not going to be as good as that now. You kind of set me up for failure. Thanks much.
Hey, I didn't write it, man. I just report the news.
All right, I am going way back to 1975 with Creepy number 68 from Warren Magazine. I'm a big fan of the creepy and eerie and sometimes Vampirella horror magazines. There was a lot of talent in those stories and a lot more than just gore and blood. And a lot of times they would have a theme for the issue. There'd be like one issue had this weird drawing on the cover. Everyone had to write a story about it. Or there would be a fantasy or swords and sorcery issue. They did at least two issues that were all Christmas themed, all Santa themed. And this is one of them was kind of forgettable. This one is amazing, and I read it every Christmas. Which is weird because it's a horror magazine. It's a little. I feel like my
Yes, it
choices are a
is.
little dark and disturbing here. Originally I was like, we'll go more heartwarming for Christmas. We got kind of weird during Halloween. Loving the torture porn that was the Spectre. We'll be more wholesome now, and I'm totally ruining that. But Creepy number 68, other than one Doug Mensch story that doesn't fit in at all, and there's a reason for that I won't get into. It's essentially written. It's a bunch of stories written by two different authors, Jerry Boudreau, I think I'm saying correctly, and Bud Lewis. And Jerry Boudreau turns in a bunch of stories, three different stories that are dark but thoughtful and really make you reflect on your life and have some real positive messages to them. But Bud Lewis is the one who just takes it home. He does first a story called A Gentle Takeover, and this is so weird. It's a story in the future where Christmas is illegal, and it's this guy who's just so frustrated the Christmas spirit is gone, and he starts a peaceful revolution to bring Christmas back. No death, no violence, nothing whatsoever, and he conquers the world with love. It's not an amazing story, except for the fact that you're reading Creepy magazine, and there isn't a single shred of violence or death. anywhere in the story. It is as wholesome can be, which in itself is disarming and shocking.
Wow.
And so you read
Oh,
this in the final frame, you've got this guy dressed as Santa Claus, tearing up, full of love, and you're like, I'm reading this and creepy. This is amazing.
nice.
And that in itself would have been cool. But the next story, the Christmas Visit, is the same idea. It's this bartender, or maybe he's the bar owner, and he's very jaded and miserable. And this well-dressed gentleman just comes into the bar and starts talking to him, and they hit it off. And it kind of becomes obvious to the reader way earlier than the character figures it out that this guy is Jesus, and he's come back to help this guy rediscover his Christmas spirit. And it's beautifully drawn by Isidre Moniz. I guess he's one of the Spanish illustrators from that time period who I don't know very well, but it's beautiful illustrations, and it's touching. It's sweet. It's not unusual. It's the kind of story you've seen a million times, where a ghost or Santa or someone shows up to teach a Grinch how to love life again and love the Christmas spirit. And you're thinking, wow, two stories in a row full of wholesomeness, and you just sort of completely relax in the way that any great horror story does to you. And then in the final freaking panel,
Here it comes.
as the main character is walking off smiling and full of the Christmas spirit, two guys jump Jesus and murder him for his wallet.
Holy crap.
Right? It's so twisted, and it totally got me. And you can debate then, what is the message? Is the message that the world has become too corrupt and too dark? Is the message that keep believing even in spite of it? Or is Bud Lewis just trying to screw with us? It's probably the last one, but it's a really powerful story. I never get tired of rereading.
It's a horror book, so I mean you have to have a little horror in somewhere in that book.
Well, he faked us out. The previous one had no horror in it at all. And then the last one, he doesn't even try to fake us out. It's so messed up. It's this husband who is just miserable with his life, and his wife, who's this very superstitious Irish woman, still believes in leaving out milk for the fairies and the spirits and all that on Christmas Eve. He chugs the milk and puts in brandy instead, and gets visited by a drunk Christmas gnome. And the two of them hit it off and become best buddies. And it's the most adorable bromance ever. The two of them go fishing together. And this Christmas gnome who's drunk off his ass. And this, bored, miserable married man just living life together and loving it and concocting a plan to murder his wife who he doesn't love anymore. And there's no
Naturally.
moral. Yeah, there's no moral. There's no sense of karmic justice or right or wrong. It is just two guys totally platonically loving each other and planning a murder that's completely unreasonable. And that's the whole story.
So I mean, did they kill the woman? Did they kill the wife?
Yeah, they totally do.
Oh,
And she
and
didn't,
then
we never even meet her. We never even given a reason why she deserves it. It's just, it's feeding into that idea that I think some married men, especially in the age before divorce was popular, had that gee, I just like to get rid of my wife and go fishing. It's dark, it's messed up, it's a message I don't support at all. I'm totally, kids at home, please don't do this.
they'll try this at home. But
Yeah, don't.
it is called eerie.
Yeah, creepy in this case, but yeah,
You're not reading Archie.
that's true.
You know?
Plot twist: it's
Nice.
actually Archie murdering Betty.
Jeff, I'm a little concerned. These are the books you pull out around the Christmas time.
Don't worry, I'll get more wholesome. Superman was on the list, he was, but yeah, I can't even. It's demented, but it's adorable and cute in spite of it. It just, you have to ignore how incredibly wrong the ending is.
Hard to ignore with all the
It's a-
bodies.
It's okay to worry about me, George. It's okay.
Those bodies are piling up, man.
Dad, what are you reading for Christmas? Well, let me tell you, honey.
Well, we're flying along, so let me give you number two.
All right, let's hear your number two, my friend.
All right, number two. I think it's a lot of people have heard of this story. It's called it's Batman 239 in February 1972. The name of it is called Silent Night, Deadly Night by Denny O'Neil, Irv Novick, and Dick Giordano. In a nutshell, somebody beating up Santas and mugging them, right? And so Batman comes upon the scene. He tracks the guy down. It turns out he just got laid off from his job a couple of months ago, and he has a niece that he's taking care of because the parents died, and it's just him and the niece. They're broke. He has no money, and the person that closed. He worked in a toy factory, and they closed the toy factory. He didn't get another job because he kept waiting to get called back. So they never called him back, and now he's desperate, and he's mugging Santas just to get any kind of money to give his niece some kind of Christmas. So Batman, grabs him and he says, "Okay, I don't believe your story or whatever." But he goes, "Come on, come, I'll show you." And he takes Batman to where he lives, and it's a place of squalor. And he sees the niece, and he comes out, and while Batman's talking to the niece, he tells him, "Well, you know, you can't keep doing this, and you blame everybody, but maybe you should be blaming the person that laid you off." And he goes, "Oh, maybe you're right." And while Batman's turned, the guy picks up a lamp and smashes Batman in the head. Okay, yeah, this is the time when Batman got beat up like often. Now no one could even punch him. But anyway, so he wakes up a couple hours later, uh, chained to like a radiator, old time radiator, and the kid's there. And it turns out, he asked the kid, "Please let me out. Your uncle's gonna do something bad." And she says, "Well, I'm loyal to my uncle. I love him, and I'm not going to disobey him." So Batman, of course, he's an escape artist, so he gets out and he's ready to track the person's name is Tim. He's ready to track Tim because he knows he's going to where his old boss lives. And the kid turns around and says, "Well, you're going to leave me here alone?" And Batman's like, "Oh, okay, come, I'll take you with me."
This
Hold on. First of all, Tim left you alone to go mug Santas. So now you're afraid to be alone? I don't get it. Plus,
but this is
Batman's gonna take
adorable.
it to a. I know Batman's gonna take it to a possible crime scene. I don't know. It gets weird. So
At
anyway,
least he
Batman.
didn't take her back to the Batcave and hypnotize her, right?
That's Superman's thing. But anyway, they get in a Batmobile, but it turns out it's such a big snowstorm that they get stuck. So like they're in the middle of nowhere, halfway to where the factory owner lives, and they're thinking, "This we're gonna freeze to death here. I don't know what is gonna happen." And they turn around, and it's a sled with a reindeer there. So they get on the sled, and it takes them to where the factory owner lives. And it turns out in the meanwhile, the Tim guy busted in and he went to attack him and he starts grabbing him and the old man starts screaming, "Ah, help me, help me." And when Batman finally gets there, Tim is carrying the old man out the front door in his arms. And Batman
Wow.
says, "Oh, you're gonna die for this. You're gonna go to jail for this." He goes, "No, no, no. The guy's sick. I'm trying to take him to the hospital." And then the old man, gains consciousness. "Oh, it's my heart. I feel sick. I don't feel good. Whatever." So they get in the sled with the reindeer. They go to the hospital, and he survives. And the nurse comes out and says, "If he didn't come here just this time, he wouldn't have survived this." So
Wow.
Batman looks and he says, "Well, look, I guess you were trying to help him, but you still have to pay for what you've done." I guess he's referring to the muggings of the Santa Claus. And he says, "Yeah, but can I just have one last night with my niece? She has nowhere else to go." And he says, "Okay." And Batman gives him like a pile of money. He says, "Here, get her a nice Christmas, but well, you'll have to answer for this. And I'll get you like after the holidays, something like that." And as he's leaving, Batman says, he's alone and he's looking up and he says, "Well, this is crazy. This is a miracle. I don't even know how that sled was there because when they go to the sled, it's gone. It's disappeared." And he looks up in the sky and says, "You know what? I think I know how."
Wow.
So yeah, it was
That's
kind of a
beautiful.
nice ending, but there was a few little logic leaps there, but
It's funny, and I mentioned to you before we started recording that after I made my list, I sort of scoured the web to see what other people have ranked as their favorite Christmas stories. And it seems
hmm
like you can figure out exactly what kind of a Batman fan somebody is by which Batman story made their list. Because half the list had this story on it, and I see why. And the other half
right.
had Sleigh Ride, which was post-crisis Batman story where the Joker kidnaps Robin and just starts running over innocent people, pulls up to a drive-through, shoots the manager point blank, and just is as demented as possible. And it's a good story. I'm not criticizing it, but it shows you, what you value in Batman. Whether you like sick and demented and dark and brooding, or whether you like some wholesome in your hero. And while I don't have either Batman story on my list, I definitely lean more towards this one. And you did it some great justice. That was a great explanation.
Thank you. It was a different era. Again, Batman got beat up easily. He did detective work to track him down. I kind of miss that Batman, but I'm an old
Yeah.
fogey, so what do you want?
I just miss a Batman comic that was about heroism and about doing what's right. That's we've lost that. And I sound like an old fogey in saying that, I know, but it's like you can only do so much dark and jaded before it just becomes repetitive and senseless.
Uh, Good luck with that. I mean, it looks like DC's only like publishing Batman comic books these days.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what sells. It is, and
Yeah.
anyone listening who loves Sleigh Ride, I'm not criticizing you. It's an enjoyable story. I own it. I've read it multiple times. I just, I miss the hero in Batman. I really do.
Yeah. Anyway, what's your number two?
Says the guy who, by the way, is reading stories about murdering wives for Christmas. But anyway, who am I to judge? All right. Fortunately, my last two are way more wholesome.
Hey, I like
number
wholesome.
two, yeah, good. Number two is one of my favorite comics of all time, period. And this one always gets me in trouble because when I read it, it makes me want to read a 200 issue run and spin offs instead of just reading the individual issue. And that is Uncanny X-Men number 98. Well, back then it was the all new, all different X-Men number 98. This was very early in Claremont taking over the X-Men. And the story is, after a bunch of crazy, crazy, crazy stories right off the bat, the team finally has some downtime and it's Christmas. And so they're doing one of my favorite things I miss about New York is they're walking Fifth Avenue around Christmas time and just being characters for once. And you see Nightcrawler and Colossus clowning around and chasing after girls. You see Scott and Jean share their first ever on-panel kiss, while Jack Kirby and Stan Lee watch from the background and go, they never did that back in our days when we were running the book. And it's just, it's heartwarming and fun and wholesome. But it also, it started a couple of things in comics that I think are so important. For the X-Men, it was the first of many, many times that the X-Men proved that their between the action stories are their best stories. The ones where they are just characters living and reacting to all they've been through and just trying to live their lives. And it's always fate that gets in the way and prevents them from having peace and comfort. But number two, here's my tinfoil hat theory, except that I haven't really researched it enough.
Tinfoil hat theories.
So somebody can probably prove me wrong with one quick example. But this is the first example I know of a comic where most of the focus of the issue isn't on action or advancing a plot, where it's just characters being characters. And you see a lot of that afterwards. The Avengers start doing it. The Fantastic Four does it. And I mean, I guess it's playing upon something that was in Fantastic Four from the beginning on a much smaller scale. But the fact that we can spend, half an issue watching the X-Men just shop in downtown, and that's interesting and that's worthwhile, it really set a tone for comics afterwards, that it doesn't have to all be about the action and fighting the bad guy. It can be about watching characters you care about develop and grow. And that's my favorite thing about comics.
Well, not so fast there, Skippy. Don't they get attacked by the Sentinels after that?
Yeah, they do. That's what I said. Half of the issue. Half of the issue.
It is. I do like when they show people in the downtime and the civilian, without their costumes. I mean, who's going to be a superhero 24/7?
Right. Well, and that's the key of the X-Men too. It was the first time we really got reminded of this. They're the only superheroes in either universe, Marvel or DC, who weren't superheroes by choice. They didn't want to be out there in costumes fighting stuff, but they don't get a chance to do otherwise. Every time they try to live a normal life, the fact that they're mutants causes their lives to be turned upside down and unraveled. And the Sentinels attacking, kind of like what I said with Leonardo number 1, the Foot Clan attacking during Christmas made it all the more tragic. The Sentinels attacking at that exact moment felt so much more unjust and so much more cruel and inhumane because it was Christmas and they were just trying to get into the holiday spirit.
I was going to say well, what kind of suffering are they doing? Most of them look like human beings. They could pass for human beings. No one would know anything. And
Except the Sentinels.
then you wave around the sentinels. I could sniff them out no matter what they look like. So yeah, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Or you just see all the anti-mutant hysteria being targeted at, one of the mutants who doesn't look normal, and just feel bad. I mean, even before the Sentinels attack, Nightcrawler's being playful about it, but he's got that image inducer that Tony Stark made for him, where he can cover up what he looks like. And he's trying to hit
Yeah,
on girls. And, on some level, you're realizing how much this sucks for him, that he can't ever totally relax and be himself.
yeah. No one really wants to be with somebody they consider, a freak or whatever. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a shame.
Yeah, but it's a heartwarming issue. I don't want to undercut it in that way. The second half is a tragedy, but the first half is it's one of my favorite X-Men stories because it makes them feel like a family. It's cozy.
Nice.
Yeah. All right.
But
Ready for your number one?
I'm ready for my number one.
Bring it,
This
sir.
this is a series that's so underrated and really is a crime that everyone doesn't love the series. It's called The Hitman.
Oh
And
yeah.
it was started by Garth Ennis and John McCrea in the pages of Demon, the Demon. And I got a feeling that's gonna make my list in the 12 days this year. But anyway, turns out this is issue number 22 by Garth Ennis, John McCrea, Steve Pugh doing the inking. And what happens is the story opens up with a man working in a radioactive, like a waste plant, and he's mopping and he's bitching and moaning about people and Christmas and how he hates everyone. And someone walks in, like as he's mopping, somebody walks in. He's like mopping in front of this big vat of, I guess, industrial waste. And as somebody walks in with a Santa Claus, hey, ho, 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 and bumps into him,
Oh
and he falls
no.
into the vat. Yeah, he
No.
falls into the vat. So they're all like, him and the other people are looking down, horrified, like, oh my God, we killed him. And he comes out of the vat, of course, as a radioactive monster, but his face is sort of falling apart and he's decaying. So he promptly kills the people that are laughing and were trying to help him. And he puts on the Santa Claus outfit and he goes out to spread terror, I guess, because he hates everybody. So anyway, it's interesting. The one little fun part is that the people that own the industrial plant, they say to themselves, this like an owner, and he says to his assistant, is we have to, you know, put the lid on this, and we have to remove this problem quietly, because we've had other violations, we don't want to get in trouble. So, put a word out that we want this guy killed and taken out of the way. And when you look close into the people talking, it's actually Smithers and Mr. Burns from The
No.
Simpsons. Yes.
You and your crazy crossovers for this list. I love it.
I'm telling you, I love it. So it's a nice little Easter egg they threw in there. So anyway,
Do you have a
you
theory that
take it
Mr.
down.
Burns is actually Satan or anything like that? Or
Well, we already know he is. So anyway, you take it to a bar. It's called Noonan's Bar, and that's where the lead character Tommy Monahan hangs out. He's a hitman. He's a hitman, and he's an assassin, and that's where they hang out, like like a low life place. And this is actually in Gotham City, which is interesting about the series, right? Where Batman does all his business, they have these people in the dark side, the other side of Gotham. So anyway, he's there, and he's there with his best friend, this guy named uh, um, uh, Neil Neil the Hat Walls. He's this big black guy and wears these terrible hats, and they're like best buds. And they're having a beer and bemoaning the fact that they're both broke, and that they're gamblers and they gamble away all their money, and they don't have any money to buy presents for their girlfriends or whoever. And so when they finally get word that they want a hit on the guy that's in the waste plant, and it's for 10 G's. So they go out, they take the contract, they pursue the guy, and they end up killing him. And they're like celebrating at the end, like, it's a happy Christmas, and it's a Christmas miracle type thing. But the wonderful thing about this story, which makes it really fun, is that Garth Ennis narrates the entire thing in the theme of "Twas the Night Before Christmas."
oh, okay.
And it's so awesome. And if you let me, I want to read the last page
Please.
after he shoots the radioactive guy. So again, this Tommy Monahan and his friend are celebrating. They're happy and whatever. So this is what it's written. He says, But where's the moral in this, you may cry? Why, sitting in front of your face, I reply. We don't need some moaner who grinches and whines that Christmas is merely a big waste of time. For Christmas is whizzle. Christmas goes ping. Christmas makes people feed squirrels and sing. And no matter your race or your class or your creed, isn't that something we all really need? One day in the year painted up in bright colors, one day when we are groovy and cool to each other. And sure you can grumble, but any who would are missing out on something incredibly good. Anyone bitching and moaning instead might get two in the back of their miserable head. Gosling, this
That
is the
is
man.
that's. Was there something about eating squirrels in there?
Feeding squirrels, sir. Hey,
Oh,
get in the
feeding
Christmas spirit.
squirrels. I was a little confused.
I mean, just the idea that these hitmen, they're like happy, like, oh yeah, we killed this guy, we're happy now. It kind of reminds me of a Quentin Tarantino movie where these guys are scum, but you get to like them, you get to enjoy the characters.
That's actually really awesome. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that you've totally redeemed me now because now you're talking about hitmen and murderers for your first pick. So thank you for that. I
Oh
appreciate it.
boy. Oh boy. Well, it's
You did me a
entertaining.
solid on that one.
It wasn't exactly eerie or creepy, but it'll do. So what's your number one, sir?
All right, so my number one, I get to finally redeem myself in this one because I'm going as wholesome can be. And this is, I read these. All right, I'll just get right to it. So it took me until I was in my 30s to realize how much I love humor comics. The really wholesome ones, the adorable. I went to a comic show recently and bought like a bunch of like Little Lulu comics just because I wanted to see what they were like. I
That's
think
nice.
as life gets more stressful and sometimes more dark, that heartwarming simplicity gets more comforting. But I will tell you, as much as I love those kinds of stories, I'm usually very disappointed by their Christmas issues because they don't do anything extra special. It's just the normal comic with like Santa showing up or something. I love Archie, but I've yet to read an Archie Christmas comic I really enjoy. I've bought the anthologies, and nothing wows me about them. But the one exception to this that really takes it to a whole new level is by far Disney's Christmas comics. Not just Carl Barks, though he's the best of them. There's a lot of Disney Christmas stories that are just, there's something extraordinary about them. It's not Christmas until I sit down and pull out my favorite Disney Christmas stories and reread them again. And I leave them out for everybody else to read too. So I'm going to focus on one specifically, my favorite of them, but really it's a shout out to Walt Disney's Christmas Parade is a series that has been reincarnated several times throughout history. I think it originally began in 1947, ran for 9 issues, came back in 1962, ran for 10 issues, but most of those are reprints, came back again in the 70s, came back again I think in the 90s, 80s or 90s, and then my favorite version is the one that started in 2003 that ran for 5 issues. Just because I think it collected some of the best of the best of the best Christmas stories, where every single issue there's something really worth reading. And the first issue from the 2003 series is my absolute favorite. But they're all incredible. And it's gotten it, the Bark story in every issue is incredible. This one is one of my favorites. It's called Letter to Santa. And the concept, forget the concept. It's both the art and the action and the fun of it. Barks can just take a visual and make it magical in a way that my words will never do it justice. So whether you have 2 giant steam cranes battling each other, almost like it's battle bots with Scrooge and Donald Duck trying to destroy each other's cranes so they can be the one to give the nephews the present they really want for Christmas, or whether it's Donald coming down the flue as Santa and like looking so incredibly dirty and disgusting and uncomfortable and just sneezing and coughing in front of really disappointed kids. Or the moment where he has beans under his shirt to make him look more fat and they expand from getting wet and somehow, I don't even know how to explain this visual, the chimney explodes and Donald's surprised, miserable look as it's happening is one of the most priceless things I've ever seen in my life. It's
Nice.
There's no way I'm going to convince you in words that you need to read this comic. But I just need to assure you that it is not Christmas for me until I read this issue. And there's There's another one later on by an artist I've never even heard of before. It's called Minnie's Christmas Tree, and we don't know who wrote it. The penciler is a guy named Lee Hooper, who I don't know at all. And it's such a stupid concept. It's Goofy and Mickey are in a cabin on a mountain, and it's been taken over by hibernating bears. And it's just page after page of sleepwalking, pathetic hibernating bears showing up where you least expect them, and it never stops being funny and adorable. And some of the stories in the issue are sleepers. Do you really care about what Brer Rabbit is doing? But where Chip and Dale is almost never entertaining, or Pluto. But somehow it's got two really, really great stories, and the rest is wholesome. So you read it and you just feel comfort and peace. And every issue is like that, where it has a couple of anchors that are incredible, and the rest are good enough. There are there are at least two great Disney Christmas stories that didn't make it into that anthology. Christmas in Shacktown, which is the one where Donald and Uncle Scrooge and Huey, Dewey, and Louie go to an actual ghetto and try to bring them Christmas, even though they're dealing with poverty. Or Christmas in Bear Mountain, which is the first appearance of Uncle Scrooge. I pull those out too, but man, when you first suggested this topic, this was the run that I absolutely had to talk about. There's no question in my mind. I couldn't even pull them out to read them because they are packed away with the Christmas decorations. When I open up the Christmas decorations, this is the very first thing that comes out every year. And I have to read it before I do anything else. It is so special to me. And for anybody listening who has never once entertained the thought of enjoying a non-superhero comic book, if you start with Walt Disney's Christmas Parade, especially the 2003 edition, you will not be disappointed. And that's a promise from me.
Wow. I don't think I've ever read a Disney comic book. But this past June, I did an overnight and went to a local show in Long Island, and I stopped at a comic shop and they had a whole bunch of Disneys from like the 50s.
Oh, wow.
And they were inexpensive. 50s and 60s, but they were inexpensive, so I bought them. So I'm gonna open them up and see if there's anything that piques my interest.
Yeah, that's awesome. I will tell you, there's a huge variety of quality that you'll find in those stories. Carl Barks will never ever disappoint you, and some of the other ones are good, and some of the other ones are not. You're going to read some groaners, but that's why I recommend the Christmas Parades. There are always going to be great stories in those, but if you have some classic Scrooge or Donald Duck or Walt Disney's comics and stories that have Carl Barks in them, you're going to enjoy them. You're going to love them.
That's a good recommendation. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thanks, and I'm glad you picked up those issues. I hope you really end up loving them. I've gotten to a point where I can read any Disney comic and have a great time, but you got to start with the real greats to get into why it's special.
I've just never read any of the Disney. As a kid, I read Archie, but all these other books that you mentioned, just Disney, ducks, whatever.
It's they have a great range to them, and I think it's largely because of Carl Barks' influence that they can be intense, they can be intelligent, they can be emotionally powerful and deeply imaginative, and also be cute and fun and heartwarming at the same time.
For sure, Barks has been mentioned in the same breath of people like Kirby and Eisner, and that type of like creator, just a major creator that that influenced a lot of people.
Yeah, he both belongs in the same category and does not at the same time. He's so different, but his influence is every bit as significant. I totally agree with you on that. And it's funny that in other countries, Disney comics kind of became the top form of popular comic out there, not superheroes, almost entirely because of Karl Barks' influence. If you go to most countries in Europe, the Disney comics are a very, very huge deal there. And here they're not.
Yeah, I guess that's part of why I never really read them. But I gotta give it a try.
Yeah, well, let me know what you think. I'm very curious. I am picking up that Dead Man story for sure. I'm going on eBay as soon as we're done tonight and getting that thing immediately.
Dude, never mind eBay. I'm sending it to you. I'll get your address after this. Seriously, I'm gonna send it to you. Why not? And Merry Christmas, one and all.
It's George Claus, and I am so happy. Thank you.
I gotta try Karl Barks.
Yeah,
I heard too much about him.
Well, I think that wraps us up for tonight. Unless there's anything else that you wanted to cover or say or do, or
No, man, it's good to get back together and do this quick podcast about Christmas. And I just hope everyone out there, whatever year you had, whatever bad things happen, look, open up your heart to somebody else. Come join us on the forum. Come to one of the Zoom meetings that we have every other week, and we just talk about stupid stuff.
That's
Sometimes that helps for grown men to talk about comic books and all the dumb stuff associated with it.
that's legitimately beautiful, my friend. It's funny. I've noticed a theme. Had a lot of people saying that this has been a really, really tough year for them, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
why that is. Maybe we're still sorting through garbage from 2020 and COVID, or when relationships broke down. Whatever it is, a lot of people have been hurting this year, and that's why I'm glad that we have the CCF. Where we have a community where people care, and I love that you do the weekly Zooms. That's incredible. I'm glad we have this space where you and I get to, talk and joke. And this has been therapy for me when I've had rough days. And I hope people listening along feel like they're part of it because you are. I feel like when you and I are talking, that there's a third person in the room. And for those of you listening right now, I'm talking to you. And I hope that you have a great holiday. And I hope that we've brought you some cheer.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Well, George, thank you so much. This is man, I love that we do this every time, and I can't wait to do it again next month when we'll finally do our original plan for episode 5 and have our special guest as well that I'm looking forward to everybody getting to meet.
Well done. Okay, everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, and whatever you celebrate, let's have a good time. All right.
Sounds like a plan. The CCF In Depth theme song is written and performed by Paul King. Special thanks to Scott Harris King, creator of the original Classic Comics Forum podcast. A massive shout out to our faithful Patreon supporters, including Bill Sinclair, Marty Golia, Michael Gallagher, Paolo Zakedu, and Tim Schneider. We absolutely could not do this without you, and we appreciate you sticking by us so very much. If you're interested in joining our ranks of Patreon supporters and checking out the really cool section of our website with all the awesome features hidden, visit us on the web at patreon.com/the Classic Comics Forum. CCF In Depth is produced in partnership with the Classic Comics Forum at classiccomics.org. Come check it out, join the discussion, become part of the family, and definitely check out the 12 Days of Classic Comics Christmas. Happy holidays, and we'll see you next month.
ClassicComics.org